Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents Beyond the Realm. So tonight I'm going to be talking about Central State, all right? A haunted mental asylum in Milledgeville, Georgia. So thank you all for returning right back to the chat. So let's go ahead and get into it, people. Now, inside Central State Hospital, once the world's largest mental institution, the Milledgeville property is now mostly empty and falling into decay. 2,000 acres still echo with the memory of the patients who were treated and mistreated there. In 1837, Georgia lawmakers authorized a lunatic, idiot, and epileptic asylum. 5 years later, the facility opened as the Georgia Lunatic Asylum on the outskirts of the cotton-rich town that served as the antebellum state capital. The first patient, Tillman B of Bibb County, arrived in December of 1842. He died of maniacal exhaustion before the next summer. Patients routinely admonished misbehaving children with the threat, "I'm going to send you to Milledgeville." I'm sorry, parents, not patients. Parents would tell their children that, "I'm going to send you to Milledgeville," if the children would get out of line. Now, Georgia novelist Terry Kay recalls that as a boy in the 1940s, he says it was one of the few words with great power, Milledgeville, city of the crazies. It was a word of fear and mystery, a word that classified funny people. Now, thousands of Georgians were shipped to Milledgeville, often with unspecified conditions or disabilities that did not warrant a classification of mental illness, with little more of a label than funny. The hospital outgrew its resources. By the 1950s, the staff of patient ratio was a miserable 1 to 100. Doctors wielded the psychiatric tools of times, lobotomies, insulin shock, and early electroshock therapy, along with far less sophisticated techniques. Children were confined to metal cages. Adults were far less sophisticated techniques. They had far less sophisticated techniques, and the children were confined to these metal cages. The adults were forced to take steam baths and cold showers, confined in straitjackets and treated with douches or notions. It has witnessed, someone says, they said they had witnessed the heights of a man's humanity and the depths of his degradation. This is Dr. Peter G. Cranford said, the chief clinical psychologist at the hospital during the 1950s. In fact, it was in 1952 that he wrote in his book titled, "But for the Grace of God, the inside story of the world's largest insane asylum." In 1959, the Atlanta Constitution's Jack Nelson investigated some reports of a snake pit. Nelson found that thousands of the patients were served by only 48 doctors, none a psychiatrist. Indeed, some of the doctors had been hired off of the mental wards. Yes, the patients were helping to run the asylum. Now that's crazy. They had patients who were clearly crazy, who were basket cases, no less, and they were helping to run the asylum. Now, the series rocked the state. Asylum staff were fired, and Nelson won a Pulitzer. Now, the state, which had ignored decades of pleas from hospital superintendents, began to provide additional funding. By the mid-1960s, a new superintendent began to provide additional funding. By the mid-1960s, as new psychiatric drugs allowed patients to move to less restrictive settings, Central State's population began to steadily decline. Now, a decade before the national movement toward deinstitutionalization, Georgia governors Carl Sanders and Jimmy Carter began emptying Central State in earnest, sending mental patients to regional hospitals and community clinics, and people with developmental disabilities to small group homes. Now, this approach had been riddled with its own tragedies, such as homelessness and drug abuse. In recent years, the AJC has reported unexpected or suspicious deaths in both the community and regional psychiatric hospitals. Nonetheless, advocates do not support a return to institutions. A 1999 U.S. Supreme Court ruling in a Georgia case allows patients with mental health problems to choose community care over institutionalization if a professional agrees. And following a 2010 agreement with the federal government, Georgia decided to move all mentally and developmentally disabled people to community facilities. Central State stopped accepting new patients in 2010. Now, as the asylum's building was vacated, 4 were converted into prisons. 1 prison remains on the property today. And in a separate facility, the Cook Building, that's what it's called, the hospital houses 179 forensic patients who have been found by courts to not be guilty by reason of insanity or incompetent to stand trial. Now, today, only 14 non-forensic patients remain at Central State, all elderly people awaiting alternative placements. By the end of the year, the State Department of Behavioral Health and Disabilities, which operated at Central State, was said to occupy only 9 buildings. Now, this was in 2015, people. Okay, I don't think anyone is there currently. Okay, so that's all crazy. Now, with fewer than 200 patients on the campus and only a handful of administrative offices operating, Central State felt abandoned. Indeed, several of the starkly beautiful brick buildings on the quad surrounding a lush pecan grove had been boarded up since the late 1970s and have begun to decay into haunted ruins. Yet amid the entropy, life goes on. Church services are still held in the chapel in the quad, which host weddings and funerals. I don't know who's getting married there, but that's crazy. Now, a new organization was trying to preserve the campus. The Central State Hospital Local Redevelopment Authority was created in 2012 by the state to revitalize and repurpose the property. Led by Milledgeville native Mike Couch, the authority had worked with real estate experts to develop a plan for reusing the property for businesses, schools, and recreation. Central State's grounds front the Oconee River and contain winding paths that the consultants envision as ideal for bicycle trails or concert venue. Now, the first new contract is decidedly more practical. A geriatric care facility for parolees will move into a former prison building. Mab Segrest, a visiting scholar in nearby Georgia, from nearby Georgia College, was writing a book about Central State and teaching a course titled Milledgeville and the Mind. She has explored the hospital's impact on the fiction author Flannery O'Connor, who lived just 7 miles from the asylum. She says her crazy preachers walk right out of the case histories of religious excitement. Their fears of wise blood, part of the belief in insanity as a hereditary illness that worsened over generations. This is what they believe. Now, as a tiny museum in an old railroad depot on the quad bears witness to the asylum's tumultuous past. Segrest argues that the importance of preserving the hospital's history. He thinks it's very important that they preserve the history. And that's why they don't tear these buildings down. And also, people remember they can generate revenue by having tours and things, people visiting these places. Now, Central State impacted kinship networks all across the state, and many Georgians still carry painful shards of this history. She says, I believe that the truth can set us free, and the hospital's history is one truth that needs more fully and collectively to be told. Morgue drawers, morgue, like a morgue where they put dead people. The morgue drawers sealed with iron doors once held the corpses of patients in the basement of the Jones building. Now, today, the building is collapsing from the top down, and falling debris covers the morgue floor. Throughout the campus, details serve as a reminder of Central State's past, such as the rounded portal in this door, which allowed staff to observe patients even as they hid in the corners. Now, I'm going to show you some photos in a moment. Most of the Powell building is now empty, including treatment rooms and rooms that once housed patients. The Jones building served as a general hospital, offering medical care to patients at Central State, as well as residents of Milledgeville and the surrounding area. Wheeled doors that look as if they belong on a submarine were part of the machinery used to steam and sterilize equipment and garments. A marble marker commemorates the asylum's origins. Advocates for redevelopment hope to preserve the Jones building. Now, campus caretakers sometimes find dead foxes and hawks in the abandoned buildings. Birds fly in and out of the open windows. Some 200,000 cast iron markers at Cedar Lane Cemetery commemorate the 25,000 patients buried on the hospital grounds. The markers with numbers instead of names once identified individual graves, but were pulled up and tossed into the woods by unknowing prison inmates working as groundskeeper to make mowing easier. So these prisoners were out there working on the grounds, doing the landscaping and mowing the lawns. And so they just pulled these markers to people's graves up because it was making it difficult for them to mow the lawn. That clearly sounds nefarious. Now I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm going to share my screen. And then I just bet they do. Damn shame. Does she work at Bellevue? Queen, I'm in the chat now here in Indianapolis. Had opened so many heinous torture beating shocks to the temples. 5,000 was let loose once the building closed and they locked them up in prison. Woo, that is crazy, my aunt. Very crazy. So everyone, please get the likes up. Please like and share the video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified when I go live. Okay, here's a picture of it from the outside. And that's actually when it was in, as you can see, pristine condition, I would imagine. Here's a door to the corridor where they could watch the patients. This is one of the statues outside. It looks like it's of an angel. It says a bronze angel serves as perpetual guardian of the dead at Central State. It was erected by members of the Georgia Consumer Council, some of them former patients, after they worked with volunteers to restore the overgrown cemetery beginning in 1997. A time capsule and a CD recording and the names of the dead are buried beneath the angel. And as you can see, this is how it's looking. It says Georgia State seal is on the facade of the vast and imposing Jones building. This is the Jones building. This is a separate building that's on the property. It was built in 1929 on the quad surrounding a pecan grove. It has been left to rot since 1979. The 142,140 square feet building once served as a general purpose hospital. Now, the interior provided locations for the TV show, The Originals and Vampire Diaries spinoff. This is the inside. These are the morgue drawers that were made of iron. And they held the corpses of patients in the basement of the Jones building that I just showed you. This is another room. That was the rounded portal door where the people could watch. As you can see that window right there, that's where they would watch the patients in that room. As you can see, it's very decayed and decrepit looking. These are the markers for the graves of the people that were buried there. And they have numbers, not names. Clearly ghastly, people. So now I'm going to show you a video about Central States. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Everyone, please get those likes up. Thank you in advance.
And then,
well, new at 11, the Central State Hospital in Milledgeville was once the largest psychiatric hospital in the United States and the second largest in the world. But now it's named one of the 10 places in peril by the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. Our Ashlyn Webb spoke with the members of the Central State Hospital Local Redevelopment Authority on what this means for the campus.
Windows shattered, bricks crumbling, roofs collapsed. This is some of what is left of Central State Hospital. Since 2012, the Central State Hospital Local Redevelopment Authority has been working to repurpose some of the 200 buildings on the 2,000-acre campus. But the scale of the campus and the investment needed to revitalize is a daunting task. That's according to the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. This week, the trust named the campus one of the 10 places in peril. Mike Couch, the executive director of the Local Redevelopment Authority, says this means opportunity.
The property has tremendous value to create jobs, and we've demonstrated that in 3 years. I mean, there's 700 jobs that weren't here 3 years ago. There's $150 million worth of construction. We got to take the next logical step, man.
So far, the authority has helped to bring 22 companies to the hospital campus, and they plan to bring even more. Their plan is to bring back the economic development the campus was once known for.
This place goes back to 1842. This was the economic engine, the hub. It was everything that was Milledgeville till the late 60s.
Amy Wright, the executive director of Georgia's Old Capitol Heritage Center, said at one point Central State Hospital employed as many as 6,000 people and had 13,000 patients.
Now we're looking at a different type of economic development in terms of a wide range of businesses.
If you can bring back at least half the jobs, we're doing what we should be doing.
In addition to economic growth, they want to maintain the character of the campus. After the hospital made the list, the authority met to look further into preservation and adding some buildings to the National Historic Registry.
Placing the campus on the National Historic Register versus placing specific buildings and areas on the National Historic Register. Each of those has very different implications when it comes to tax credits, when it comes to redevelopment options.
The authority is considering adding the depot. It'll be repurposed as the Old Capitol Museum and will hold exhibits highlighting Middle Georgia's history. Some of those include the history of Native Americans, the creation of Baldwin County, and remembering Central State Hospital. But as for the authority looking into tearing down some buildings,
we're really starting to have a conversation about some of the buildings we think that can't be salvaged. Could we preserve a facade, perhaps? Can we build behind the old? But we're not at the point where we're really ready to make a final decision.
Couch says they're calling in the experts, the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation, to help them make that decision. In Milledgeville, Ashlyn Webb, 13 WMAZ News.
Couch says they're expecting to bring 500 more jobs to the campus over the next 16 months, and one of their focuses will be redeveloping the depot over the next year.
Okay. Sounds like they want to put things back together, people. Now let me show you this other video. I'm going to share my screen. Everyone, please get the likes up. Please like and share. Let me get this chat back moving. Okay, there we go. Melanated Brown said he needs some sleep. Oh my goodness, you are a hot mess. Okay, here we go.
Hospital in Milledgeville was bigger than the antebellum capital. It was a city within a city, an economic engine the community lived, breathed, and thrived on. 41 NBC's Amanda Castro takes us back in time to relive the hospital's past.
The Pecan Grove at Central State Hospital sits empty and quiet. But 50 years ago,
you'd see hundreds of people going about the business of mental health care.
The buildings on campus are a mere shadow of what was once the largest mental health institution in the world. In 1837, the legislature spent $20,000 to build a dormitory near Milledgeville so the state's mentally ill could receive treatment.
Mental health was no longer being beaten out of them as in the witchcraft and restraints. People were seeing it as something that could be treated.
Historical documents say the first patient was Tillman Barnett.
December of 1842. He didn't live long. He died in 1843, age 30. He came chained to an ox cart from Macon.
Thousands after him came to Milledgeville for treatment.
At that time, electric shock treatment, that was what they thought worked best, so they did it, or insulin shocks, or lobotomies. Nobody did any of those things at that time for any other reason but to try to help.
Edwin Atkins' great-grandmother, Betty Stubbs, was a patient from 1900 to 1931. He says her husband institutionalized her.
He wanted her to have a son, and after 2 more dead children, and never a son that lived, she came over to Milledgeville.
At the time, he says Milledgeville was the place to get rid of people
You know, the little kids that bounce the ball on the playgrounds, they used to say, Edwin's sick, Edwin's ill, they're going to send him to Milledgeville. And Milledgeville was synonymous with a state prison, a boys' reform school, a state insane asylum, and a military school.
25,000 people were buried in cemeteries here on campus. These markers are a way to remember those who call Central State Hospital their final resting place.
There were people who needed to be here because there was no other alternative for them. And there were people that also were warehoused here by their family.
Baldwin County Commissioner Henry Craig remembers growing up on the campus when his father was superintendent during the 1960s. He was in charge of 13,000 patients.
He was also the mayor. He was also the police chief. He was also the sheriff. He was also the warden. In those days, all of those things happened here.
A city within a city with its own schools, chapels, police department, and the largest kitchen in the world. Craig lived, worked, and even married his wife on the grounds.
I can tell you a story about every building. I walked with the patients, I walked with children, I walked with my parents' friends, and everybody knew each other. And this was his own community.
A community the residents depended on to survive.
This became the institution that Milledgeville and Baldwin County lived on, that it paid wages for 3,000 people. It was careers for 3,000 people.
In October 2012, the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities started moving patients from the Craig Nursing Center at CHS to community-based settings. The last patient left in April. Atkins says the hospital will never be what it was. He's hoping everyone with a connection to the campus can share their memories on the Facebook group, Friends of Central State Hospital.
So we're trying to get all that brought in because yet to be told the real history.
He's hoping to get some closure on his personal story, as well as preserve a prominent part of Milledgeville.
It's still going to have its glory and its legacy. And if we have anything to do with it, that legacy will always be there for the public to find.
In Milledgeville, Amanda Castro, 41 NBC News.
Okay, people, so that is very interesting. Now I have one more video to show on Central States. And this is brief. This is just like a minute and a half long. So, but I want you all to see this. Everyone, please get the likes up. Please like and share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time I go live. Thank you in advance.
Ghost town. Buildings are decaying and the windows have long since blown out. Central State Hospital was once the largest mental institution in the United States. Central State opened in 1842 and at its peak housed more than 12,000 patients. If the walls could talk, oh, what stories they would tell. GC360 was able to walk through the hallways of the abandoned hospital buildings, meeting history face to face. These halls were home to all kinds of people, from Civil War veterans to the criminally insane. Old files and clothing left scattered on the floor amplify the eerie, untold stories hidden among the shadows. Much of Central State's history, good and bad, has been lost. But there is one place on campus where the walls do talk, the Central State Hospital Museum. Located in an old Victorian depot, historic artifacts from the hospital are displayed. The museum features personal items of patients and medical equipment used for treatment, some of which is shocking by today's standards. A patient room is staged, as it would have been inside of the hospital. Photographs are on display, illuminating the lives of those who worked and lived at Central State. Medical resources used by hospital staff are also available for viewing. The museum is not well known. However, it acts as a bridge from Central State's past to its present. Tours of Central State Hospital Museum can be arranged. Call 478-445-4128 if you want an up-close and personal encounter with Central State's eye-opening and sometimes disturbing history. Reporting for GC360, I'm Kendall Thomason.
And so you can go there on tours, people, if you want to go there and see it all for yourself, which clearly I don't. Now, many people have reported paranormal activity, saying they've seen ghostly apparitions, they've seen orbs, felt someone breathing on the back of their neck. someone reaching out to touch them. All so crazy, but I don't want to have anything to do with it. Thanks. Just watching it on YouTube's good enough for me, okay? Clearly, it looks spooky. And Cherokee Descendant King said, I pass on this one. Okay? Police. Cutie Tootie says, hell no, I don't want to go on no darn tour. Oh, Yvette said, Paris says, Yvette Powell, you know they probably did all kind of nefarious things at that hospital. I bet they did. Because you know, they used to torture people in some of these mental asylums. That's probably why they closed many of them down. They used to torture people, perform lobotomies, and all types of things. And if any of you saw the movie from 1973, I believe it's the year it came out, with Jack Nicholson, the guy from The Shining, it was called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Did anybody see that movie? That's what these places always remind me of. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And the way they treated those patients on that movie is likely how they treated many of these patients in real life. Okay? Yeah, so that's all crazy. Alexis KD says, my oldest sister in Richmond, Indiana, she calls it a concentration camp. And like prison, only 2 people can visit her. It's like Fort Knox. Madness. That is crazy. Okay, Original Man says he saw that. Yes, Sweet Pea saw it also. Yes, some of you saw that movie. Yeah, that was a good movie. That was a good movie. So with that all being said, that's the story of Central States. Very crazy. So tomorrow, I want you all to tune in because I'm going to be doing a very interesting story about the Black Dahlia. I don't know if you all ever heard of that, but the mystery of her death was never solved. This woman was found cut in half, lying on the lawn, all right? And they never found out who killed her. The Black Dahlia. That's the name of her. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow on True Crimes. Going to be talking about that on True Crimes tomorrow. And so with that all being said, I want to remind my moderators that we have a meeting in the morning at 11 a.m. It's not going to last long, okay? I know we get in there, we get to talking. Sometimes we talk for hours, but at the end of the day, if anyone has to leave the meeting or whatever, and the rest of us are just sitting there cackling, feel free to go ahead and leave. But the business that we discussed, that's only going to take like maybe 20 to 30 minutes, okay? So everyone, I'm going to send you the invitations tonight for the meeting tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., okay? So thank you all for tuning back in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV Presents Beyond the Realm. I hope you all enjoyed these stories tonight. It was fun researching these stories, getting the information, all of that. And it's going to be more of these to come. All right. So with that all being said, I wish you all love, peace, and prosperity. Enjoy the rest of this lovely night. And I hope to see you all right back in the chat tomorrow when we talk about the Black Dahlia on True Crimes. Okay. If you haven't subscribed to that channel, go ahead and do so you don't miss out. Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents True Crimes with an S. All right. Now also be going live on the root of Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents The Root of All Evil. I'll be going live on there tomorrow also.